What's happening? Welcome to Slapsville. And as you can see, I take Slapsville with me wherever I go, and it's always a different place. But I'm determined to keep this Slapstream going, and I apologize for missing a couple episodes here and there. I'm trying to make it happen every Saturday, but I'm getting busier and busier, so I might be skipping. Hope you can understand, and hope you're going to be still following this. And at the beginning, would like to thank all of you that helped out with subscribing to the channel because I reached 3,000 subscribers. So when I started Slapstream, I think it was about 1,000 or a little bit over 1,000. So I'm kind of excited about this whole YouTube adventure a little bit. And special thanks to the new Patreons. Thanks a lot for subscribing. I've been better with Patreon. I've been posting updates and everything that I'm supposed to do. So if you'd like to check it out, make sure to go to the link that's in the description, a Patreon link, and check it out and support the Slapstream, support Slapsville, and support my work in the Slapsville universe. And what else? Also, if you'd like to support the channel, make sure to go to PayPal and Venmo. All the links are below. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my today's guest. I believe it's the 53rd episode of the Slapstream, and that will be Jason Brown. Welcome to Slapsville. What's happening?
Hey, how's it going, Djordje? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's going pretty good. Pretty good. How are you?
Right on.
Where are you at? Do you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Excellent.
I got my headphones on because the years of music have beaten my hearing down just a hair. But this makes it easier.
The best of us. I would like to ask the audience to let us know if they can hear everybody fine, if they want me louder, you louder, or whatever it is. I do hear a little echo on your end so I'm not sure if that's from the headphones or not, but if you can fix that, great. If not,
I'm not sure what it is. There's no open audio. It's okay. Only coming through my phone, so it must be in the signal.
No worries. So how have you been holding up during these crazy challenging times?
Well, that's a good way to put it. It's I feel like we're kind of coming out of the tunnel right now, which is awesome because it's been since a year ago March, it's been a wild, weird year for musicians, especially because I play music and I'm also bass lutherie is my main daytime activity.
Your main gig,
so,
right?
Yeah, so
over 10 years.
I used to tour full time, but lutherie was always there. I've been doing it about 30 years, but as I settled down and got older, the lutherie became more and more predominant, and it's really become my main thing. So when COVID hit, it was really a 1-2 punch. It's like it took out all my gigs and it took out all my clients' gigs. So it was really, part of this. I was in the worst possible sector, as you and all your friends know. It's been a wild ride.
Absolutely, it's crazy.
But
it is, we're dealing with it. We're dealing with it, and it is what it is. So, and hopefully, we're getting out of it now. So, gigs are coming back. We're starting booking shows. So, we'll see.
And I think it also it bore some good fruit. Like this, more of this started happening, doing online access to things. I think exploded, over because of out of necessity.
Oh yeah.
So there is a silver lining that I think people learned how to use Zoom. People learned how to do what we're doing right now and to keep the ball rolling one way or the other. And I think that's probably the best thing that came out of it.
I think so. I think you're absolutely right, and I think we should. I'll still like to keep this thing going, but I don't know. If the tours start happening and more, it's going to be challenging. But I'll definitely do my best.
But I know maybe it's something you can do while you're on tour because there's lots of downtime. And I saw a cellist who did a similar thing, real fantastic cellist, and he was bored on tour all the time. So he started making these little mini documentaries of like how to play cello and how to set up your cello and all this stuff from his hotel room while he was on tour. And he ended up putting together a wealth of really cool stuff. So
That's great.
that might be your new angle, because I know you're going to be busy as a player.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to the idea, and then I do like. I started to like in this whole YouTube world. Maybe I'm a little late to the game, but I think that's a platform that I kind of enjoy the most. I do other social media, but less and less, and this YouTube thing is kind of pretty much the only regular thing. But I want to be focused on you. I want to be focused on your career, on your you have a rich career, you have a lot, we have a lot to talk about, and then I would like to start from the beginning. So how did you get interested in music? What was the trigger? How did you discover bass?
Well, in first grade, I can go all the way back to first grade. My best
Please do.
friend, a guy named Stefan Knaus, up in Altadena, California, where I grew up, was already a great violinist. He was like in the youth symphony and all that stuff. And I remember just being so impressed with his abilities to just like whip out a tune and play music. And in my family, it was always around me because my mom was a professional ballet dancer. My dad was a electrical engineer, but his hobby since he was a kid was playing jazz guitar, and he was really good at it. So I grew up in a home where my mom only listened to classical music and my dad only listened to jazz. And I didn't even know there was other kinds of music except when we went on a trip in a car, and we had to play the radio and all you could get was a rock station or something. So it was a good start, even though it was really nerdy. And, I had to take a little bit of abuse for not being hip to what a lot of the other kids were hip to until I got a little older and discovered Led Zeppelin on my own and thought, that's cool. But so I got into wanting to play violin. I told my mom and she's like, oh, great. Here's your piano lessons. And I was like, what? Piano lessons? That's not violin. But it turned out it was a good place to start. And I never did play the violin, but I got interested in the bass because it looked like a violin. And that worked out anyway.
That's a cool start, and I really believe that learning piano is kind of probably the best thing that you can do for your kid or for yourself when you start playing music. And then because you can understand melody obviously, but you can understand like a counterpoint, and you can understand harmonies, and you can see the chords, so it's actually kind of a visual thing. And then you're also kind of trying to completely separate your hands, like to be independent, like in playing melodies or chords, so which would be helpful like even for drums.
That's beautifully put. I couldn't have said it better. I think the piano it's so visual because you can see like a 1, a 3, and a 5, you can see how a chord is constructed and get the idea of the spatial relationship. Like, oh, this is every other step. And without that, when you look at a stringed instrument or something, it's kind of confusing because it's like patterns are, they're the same in one part of the neck and they're different in another part of the neck for the same scale, depending how you approach it. So for me, I think the piano made me able to visualize music when I listen to it. I can go, oh, I hear the chord. I can see what the notes are. And it's a little more easy to just get your head around it. But I never got real good at piano, but I got good enough to understand.
Do you still play it?
I screw around on it. Like I've got kids that are into music, and we've got a keyboard in the living room that gets accessed about once a day. So, but I don't play a lot, but I like it. I've worked out a few little ditties that I like to play just to keep moving on it. But I wouldn't say I play piano.
So it was a piano at first, and then so have you had a chance like to play violin as well?
Well, I've ended up playing violin just because I started working on them, but I never did end up playing the violin, and nobody should hear me play the violin. That's how it sounds. It's not so good. It's a very tiny instrument, and I realized that violin is difficult. Every great violinist I know has like a crooked neck and a big like carbuncle under their chin from holding the violin like that for 20 years. And you know, bass is its own problem, but turns out violin is actually pretty rough on you. And
we're all sacrificing our lives for music.
I discovered, yeah,
you
have to, you do. But then I discovered the cello, because I work on cellos and basses and violins, but mostly cellos and basses, mostly basses. But I started playing cello about 10 years ago, because I thought this is like the Goldilocks of the instruments. You know, like, this is too small, this is too big. And then I discovered the cello. I'm like, wow, this thing is like,
perfect.
It's manageable. You sit down in a chair, you're totally comfortable when you play it. It's in the vocal human range register, you know, and it's laid out from the lowest note is a C and the highest string is an A. So it even covers like a C chord, and it all just makes sense. And I was like, wow, the cello is awesome. Except, you know, there's not a lot of cello gigs. It's not as fun as the bass. So I'm glad I didn't focus on it.
Do you slap it?
You can. I actually did. I used to play in a band in Wisconsin called Sam Winch, and we had a cello section in the band. And this one gal was fantastic. She played on Broadway in a bunch of really, like, you know, killer musicals, and she had to slap it on a part, and I taught her how to do it, and she did it. And
it was
and slapped the cello on Broadway.
Did they require Bartok Pizzicato? Was that a deal?
Yeah, pretty much, except they wanted it. It turned out she was literally slapping it. She asked me to show her how to slap it, and I showed her. She picked it up, and
nice.
And she did it on Broadway, and said everybody was like really tripped out.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
but the best slap is definitely on bass, and I would like to hear you play something. Do you? And you have all these basses behind you. Do you mind?
I've got my old workhorse bass here, which is I'm hooked to these damn headphones, so apologize if I.
No
rip
worries.
them off
you know,
the
when
wall.
you play, just take them off and then play. You know, I don't want you to be limited in any way.
This. Is that too loud?
No, it's not too loud. It's perfect.
I actually had this had it plugged in just so you could hear it a little better, so it doesn't just sound like all clicky. It's just this is my old rock and roll bass here, complete with a DEUCE bridge on it. And I bought this bass in Nashville. The guy had it for sale, and it used to be brown, and I bought it as a backup bass because it was cheap, and I thought I should have it. And then I was playing a gig with the Shack Shakers because I used to fill in. For them all the time when they were at a period of not having a steady bassist, and I lived with a couple of those guys, and they were good friends, and so I ended up playing with them a lot. During one gig in Nashville, JD put a lot of lighter fluid on this bass. I mean, a lot. I didn't really notice while it was happening because I was busy playing, and he was hosing down the back of the bass with a can of Rondeau and lit it. And this damn thing was on fire like you can't believe. The flames were going up to the ceiling, and one of the customers got so freaked out that he ran up and threw a pint on me to put it out, which was actually probably saved my ass. And but the bass was so burnt, it was all blistered and looked like hell. So a friend of mine and I just painted it over and bondoed all the craters and painted it black, and it's been black ever since.
Wow, that's a cool story.
But, I don't know what to play for you really here, except
whatever you feel like it, you know. So we just want to. I know that you have a unique technique. We're gonna talk about it, but let's jam a little bit.
Can you hear the swap okay over the? Yeah. Over it. Oops. I'm trying to make it so it's not gonna sound like crap if I can help it. I got the one nylon string on this bass when I I think I helped start the weed whacker craze by accident because I didn't know anybody that was doing it. And we were on tour in Austin with Hank 3, and I was bored. And I went to the hardware store just because I always go to hardware stores to look at stuff because it's, hardware stores are cool. And they had this roll of weed whacker string that was 0.095 thousandths. And it was like $4. And I was looking at it and I'm like, that looks just like a nylon string, that they sell for a lot more. And the same size as my gut strings. And I was using gut at the time and they were always falling apart because of the humidity and everything. You know the story with guts. So I bought a roll of this for $4 and I put one on and it was incredible. In fact, this is from that roll. I bought this roll 20 years ago in Austin. And when I got back to Nashville, a couple friends like Jeff Fireball were like, whoa, where'd you get that? Can I have a piece? And I was like, sure. So I peeled off a piece of, a G string for a few different people. And they started using it. And I love it. I still love it. It has a real nice gutty sound. And it lasts literally forever. I mean, this string has been on this bass for 15 years. I don't know. It's ridiculous. And it doesn't even look like it's going to break. But I did buy a whole new roll of it just in case. I don't know. It just has a beautiful sound. And you can even bow it. So it's a beater, but it works.
It sounds good.
I don't know what it's coming across like, but I'll grab my bow here and try a little bit of that later.
How much do you play with the bow?
Quite a bit, because in my business of lutherie, most of my clients are classical bassists, and the ones that aren't classical are jazz bassists. And surprisingly, a very, very small number of people are like rock and roll bassists or rockabilly bassists. It's just almost none. It's occasionally I get some that have an emergency or a problem, and people that that are friends that are into that. But
we have a question from a friend.
All right.
The question is that a CR 125?
Yeah, that is. How did is it showing?
And the question is from Burns Info.
Burns?
Yeah.
Well, we know who that is.
Exactly.
Yeah, it ain't no Kawasaki. Let's put it that way. Burns, I gotta thank him for getting me back into dirt bikes. It was awesome. Over the years, I've known Burns about 20 some years, and he's become a really great friend over the years. And starting about 10 or 15 years ago, I don't know, every now and then he would just send me a picture of a dirt bike that was for sale, because he knows I used to just be like a dirt bike addict. I grew up riding since I was 7. And so into it. And I'd get this picture from Jason Burns every now and then. I'd look at this one. I told him kind of like the bikes I was dreaming about. I'd get an old Suzuki. I'd get it, old RM 125. And then finally one day, we started hanging out more, and he's got bikes all over the shop at Blast Cult and everything. And I was always drooling over his bikes.
Than bases.
Yeah, it was like a point there, and they were cool bikes. He's got a real sharp eye for style, and had done some really awesome things with like his old Huskies. And so that didn't help at all. I was getting the bug back really bad at that point. And then a friend of mine contacted me and sent me a picture and goes, hey, I got this CR for sale. And it was one of the bikes I used to have when I was a kid, like when I was a teenager. And the guy's like, I'll even bring it to you. And he brought it over to Blast Cult and he sold it to me. And I bought it on the spot. It was like, that's it. And I got back into it. So
guys, both Burns and you share the same passion for basses and bikes. So.
Yeah. And it's funny because people get confused a lot. They're like, wait, are you the guy? You're Jason Burns, right? I'm no Jason Brown. He goes, wait, the guy that rides dirt bikes? I'm like, yeah. The bass guy, yeah. It's like, but different. Wait, did you both play with Hank 3? Yeah. Jason Burns used to play with Hank 3 after I did even. So it's very confusing, but it was inevitable that we hang out. So now he's like my favorite riding buddy, and we push each other pretty hard. And I miss that he's gone away to the UK because we don't ride as much, but we'll figure out how to do it. He did leave a bike here so we could ride, which is great.
That's cool.
I found him an antique Kawasaki that turned out to be a
California.
It's a fun thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Tell me, how did you discover upright bass, and how did you discover upright bass slap?
Well, that I started playing electric bass and lived in Humboldt County, and Humboldt County back in the 80s was a fertile place for music. It was like there were tons of great players in West San Francisco. Humboldt, for those that don't know, is like the Emerald Triangle where they grow all the pot, and it's up in extreme Northern California, like above or 90 miles south of Oregon. Actually, it's just right up there in the redwood forest. And I moved up there to go to college and wound up in a band like instantly instead, and that really sidetracked my learning of college things. But it was incredible for music. I learned so much and got to play in so many different settings. So I was playing electric bass in a really cool blues band. It's like a jump blues band called Dr. Ross and the Hellhounds. And it was like a 7-piece band with horn section and everything had arrangements and excuse me. It's a really good band, and I was in over my head pretty much. It's like I got that gig because I went to the jam session that they hosted, and I'm in my early 20s at that time. I was like, 22 years old. And I go to the jam session with no idea what to do, really. I played electric bass in a rock band and a punk band, and was had a musical background, but wasn't what I would say on fire on the bass or anything. But so I just copied what their bass player did. It was like a blues jam, and I was always good at listening and picking it right up. So I listened to what he did, and then they called me up to play. So I just kind of played like he did. I just figured out the right key and pretty much copied him. And
there's lots of slap in jump blues. Have you played? Were you using slap back then?
No, at this point I was still on electric bass, but this is exactly this is what led to the upright. Was that so? I do this jam session, and the guy goes, "Hey, our bass player's quitting. Can you join?" And I was like, "Oh, sure, yeah." And so everybody in that jump blues band was like twice my age. They're all in their 40s, mid 40s, late 40s. I'm at 22. So I just kind of, the saying, fake it till you make it. I just worked my butt off. Like every time I learned some songs or they sent me stuff to learn, I tried my hardest and it came to me and it worked. And I ended up holding on to that gig, and we ended up going on tour to Australia. And that's where I met. That was like in '89. And we played a gig in Woolloomooloo, which is in Sydney. It's like this club was just off the hook. I mean, you've been to Australia a lot, so you know what it's like. They don't mess around, man. It's like, I don't care if it's a mid-sized club. They'll put the biggest PA in the world in there, and it'll just like absolutely rock. Like they don't mess around. There's a reason AC/DC came from Australia. And so this band, the Eddies, is playing, and the guy's got an upright bass, and he's just destroying it. His name's Dale Steven, and he's just killing it and slapping the shit out of it, and absolutely badass. I was just amazed. I remember not really, I always thought of upright bass as jazz music and classical music, and I didn't know you could plug it in. I'd seen videos of the Stray Cats, but it's not the same when you see a video or something. It's like when I was standing in front of this guy with a giant Australian sound system, and the place was so packed, it was spilling out onto the sidewalk. It's like a Sunday afternoon regular gig they did. And I was just blown away. I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. I mean, I could feel the bass in my chest. It was just pounding. And
that was
this
like
guy,
mid-80s? When was that?
This was like late 80s. It was like 89. Yeah. 80. And this guy was just, and they were just like they did 50s rock music, like, and some originals, and they were huge. they like had an opening for a sound tech, and it's 50 grand a year. That's how, and they would like tour all over Australia and like Thailand and, you know, Southeast Asia because it's close by. And anyway, so we became friends and we started doing a lot of gigs with them because we were in Australia for 2 months. And he became a real good friend. And he taught me my first slap bass lessons. And looking back, I realized the guy was a real hero, man. I mean, now that I know better, I know how bad he was suffering. His action was so high, and his hand looked like a piece of leather. It really did. I mean, I just remember looking at his hand and going, "Oh my God!" So that's what slap bass does to you. And it was like a piece of wood. I mean, his skin, his entire palm was a different color. It looked like, you know, like you know, tanned leather, and it was about as thick and hard too. And I was just like, holy crap! So he taught me how to slap some stuff on his bass, you know, and my fingers almost fell off. And I got the impression it was really hard, and like, this is gonna kill me, but it's worth it. I'm gonna do it. And as soon as we got home to America, the band leader that was with also was equally blown away. He's like, let's get you one of those uprights. So he helped me get my first upright, which I bought from Trevor Dunn from Mr. Bungle, who was a friend of mine. And I got a nice blonde K from him, and because he lived in Eureka, and Mr. Bungle actually used to rehearse at my house in Humboldt. And so I bought this nice old K that was real hard to play, but it was great. And I was so excited. It was my first upright. And it was just absolutely awesome. And that's really where it all started. I just got hooked at that point. And I was fortunate that the band leader, a guy named Rich Ross, was extremely supportive of it. And he loved the whole concept of the loud upright bass. He totally got it. You know, we saw the same thing together for the first time, and we were both just like, dude, wow, that's so rad. So he was all in and on board, and we formed a new little group that was like a 4-piece where we could really showcase like a little more of a high energy trio 4-piece kind of a setting, more of a rockabilly influence, and it was great, and that just got me hooked.
So those are like already the early 90s?
That was, yeah, the early 90s. It was like we came home from Australia in 89 and got a bass right away, and then started touring with a smaller group with him in the early 90s. And we were really active in like the West Coast blues scene, which was really healthy at the time, you know, with like people like Curtis
Hollywood
Salgado.
Fats?
Huh?
Hollywood Fats?
Yeah, I remember hearing him, and also like the Fabulous
Little
Thunderbirds.
Charlie was playing a lot back then, right?
It was like, who was?
Little Charlie and the
Oh yeah,
Nightcap.
Little Charlie and the Nightcaps. We toured with them all the time, and Fabulous Thunderbirds and Curtis Salgado, and a dude named Earl Thomas. A bunch of the West Coast blues scene. It was really pretty vibrant. There was lots going on, and we would just kind of tour the whole state, which is a huge state. It's like California's like the size of a country, so it was really great. And I got a lot of support from people like Little Charlie, and they started using an upright bass after we did. It was funny because we were touring with them, and they were using electric bass still. And then after a year, all of a sudden, Little Charlie started using the upright, and it started looking more and more like our show because we were doing lots of shows together. But I was flattered in case there was any influence, because they were a great band.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. California jump blues scene was
it
something
was
special back
smoking.
then. Oh yeah.
Back in the old days, you know, and there were clubs like Larry Blake's, and there was real happening scene in Sacramento and San
Little Charlie was
Diego.
from Sacramento, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's we always, and there was like the Redwood Run, which was a big, huge biker rally, which brought in lots of the blues bands. And then they had a blues concert that was at the same site as that Redwood Run, like a week later, I think, that was really a heavy duty blues festival. I don't know if it's still going on, but like we opened up for John Mayall and the Blues Breakers and stuff like that really opens your eyes, because those cats are like, you know, world class good. And it just got my attention. I was like, wow, there's some great music going on. and
So
the
so you
blues
already
is
started
fun.
slapping it at the time. Can you repeat the name of the bass player from Australia?
His name was Dale Steven, and
Dale
I don't
Steven.
remember if it's Steph or Stev, but he pronounced
Okay.
it Dale Steven, and he lived in Sydney. And I'd love to hook up with that guy again. He's a guy that I just lost touch with, because way back then there weren't cell phones, and
So
you didn't
Dale,
like,
if you're
hey,
watching, make sure to send a message to Jason on Instagram.
I
His
would love to see you.
handle is in the description of the video.
Yeah, Dale was awesome, and he was inspirational, and he was just a great dude. I started going over to his house on, having barbecues, and he'd show me bass stuff, and you know,
That's so cool.
it's different nowadays. Everybody's phones, and you're like, "What's your number?" I got your Instagram and everything. Back then, it was just like I had his number written down somewhere, and 5 years
You
later, he
lost.
moves, and it changes, and you lose touch, and you're just like gone forever until you cross paths again somehow on electronic media. So I haven't yet with him, but I've always kept an eye out for him, because he was huge
Oh
in my
yeah,
world. And
it sounds like it.
there was another guy in Australia too, I got to mention, this guy named Doug Williams. And
Hmm.
he was this left-handed electric bass player that was just incredibly funky. This dude was like, Vernon White, just unreal, like cool, stylish dude. And the reason he was so important to me was that as soon as we got to Australia to go on this big tour, it's like a 2-month tour, I got my bass stolen at the airport. Like, I land in Sydney,
Ooh.
and I'm like the last guy there going, oh no, this is bad, and all the luggage is gone, everybody's gone, and I'm standing there with no bass, and had to go to the airline office to get like more bad news, and it never showed up. And it was a nice Music Man bass. It was a 78 Music Man blonde electric bass. And once we started playing in Australia, I realized right away that that was the bass to have. Like, everybody owned that bass that was anybody. And I was like, oh man, it didn't make it. It didn't make it out of the airport. Somebody saw that and was like, boom. So this guy, Doug Williams, I ended up borrowing a couple basses, and we had a really cool house gig in Sydney at a place called No, that's not. I forgot what it was called. But it was a cool after hours club where all the bands that played, like even big acts, like David Bowie would be there. Anybody that played in the Sydney area, this was the place to go and drink until the sun came up. And so we had a house gig in this place, and it was really fun. So I met this dude, Doug Williams, and I told him my story about getting my bass ripped off. And he brought me 2 basses. Like, the next day, he goes, hey, be here tomorrow. So he brings in these 2 basses. He goes, pick one. One of them was like a custom bass that was all, beautiful, and the other one was an old beat up black P bass. And I said, well, I'll take the old black P bass, because I don't want to take your nice custom bass. And he goes, it's yours. And he gave it to me, and I just never forget that. It blew my mind, and it was so loving and supportive, and completely erased the utter bogosity of having your bass stolen.
So
So
it ended up like being a good, nice memories. Like
it was
not
very nice.
deeply
Yeah,
bad.
it was beautiful. So Australia is a very vibrant, happening music scene, and I got to give it a lot of credit for
Oh, absolutely,
moving me
absolutely.
forward a lot.
I would like to know, like you talked about your upbringing and your mom being into classical and jazz, and dad being into jazz music. Have you ever had any formal lessons in upright bass,
Yeah,
classical or jazz?
that's when I decided I had to get more serious about it, because I knew that there's more depth to music, and you really kind of need some help. I think nowadays YouTube's so awesome, you can just get incredible instruction at your leisure. But I was lucky, I had a really great teacher locally up in Humboldt. I lived in Arcata, which is a little small town in Humboldt County, and I worked at the local music store and everything. And so I had this teacher named Craig Whips, who's no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago, but he is a really good jazz and classical bassist. And I remember the first time I went to his house, and I played his bass, and I had my old K that I bought from Trevor, and it, like I said, it wasn't really set up. It didn't play easily, let's say, and I had some really tough strings on it too, because I didn't know any better. and I play Craig's bass, and it practically plays itself. I mean, it was just like, it was ridiculous. It played so stupid easy that my jaw dropped, literally. I didn't think it was possible because I'd played a number of uprights besides mine, and they were all hard. I remember Ken Lawrence, who's a good friend of mine from up in Humboldt. He's a bass builder, electric bass builder. He had an upright that he just got. I remember playing his and just going like, God, this is brutal. None of these things play easy. It's so hard. And then so I played Craig's bass. I'm like, what's going on? This bass is like cheating. It plays itself. And he goes, well, that's because Bob Djordje worked on it. And you're friends with his son, Jeff Djordje. And I was like, are you kidding me? He lives, that's his dad. He goes, yeah, his dad's a really legendary bass luthier and bassist and lives in LA. And he comes up here all the time to visit Jeff. And so that was it. I was like, I got to meet this Bob Djordje guy, because I was doing guitar lutherie already and had started apprenticing with an acoustic guitar builder named Steve Helgeson, who passed away a year ago, unfortunately. But he was a huge influence. And I found that I had a knack for it working with Steve. So then when Bob came along, it opened my eyes that, wow, upright bass really is a complicated instrument, and you don't need to kill yourself playing it. It's hard enough. And Bob was so good at setting up a bass, like he'd plane the fingerboard just to the perfect shape and set the sound post in the bridge and everything. And the work looked so elegant and beautiful that the bass just looked like it was worth twice as much when he was done with it. And it was unbelievable. So I was lucky that I got to witness his work, because I worked in a town where he had worked on many basses around town, because he visited his son all the time. And anywhere Bob went, people would be like, hey, can you do my bass? And so he did. And then one day he actually joined me at my music store where I worked at Wildwood Music, and fixed some basses right there in my shop. And at this point, I'd been studying his work very thoroughly and working on basses a lot. And then I finally get to work with him in person and ask all the questions that I had. And it was fantastic. And that really was the breakthrough moment where I understood how to be a really good bass luthier, especially in the realm of setting them up. And then I'm still good friends with Jeff, and they are since retired. Bob retired, and I'm totally flattered that they've been sending me their customers, people that used to go to them, their clients, and they're like, oh, we're retired now, but here's a guy you can go see, and they send him down to me. And I just got a care package from Jeff Djordje, which was awesome, with a bunch of sound posts and ebony and really cool stuff from their shop that they don't need anymore. So I have to give them a lot of credit with inspiring me. And I learned more from Bob than he realizes, because I studied his work so much. And Jeff taught me a lot too, because he told me, Jeff's also a fantastic bass player, an excellent luthier, just like Dad. And between the two of them, they were very generous with sharing information, and it just all made sense. And I picked it up and been working on it ever since, for like 30 years now. But so that was I took a little detour from the classical training part, because it was really the lutherie that stood out.
Okay.
But Craig Whips he taught me proper fingering, Samandel method, got me started on the bow right away, and got me doing the proper exercises. And probably the most important thing was just good technique. He was like, emphasize, don't bend any one joint, right? Don't make any one joint do all the bending. Like, bend your wrist a little, bend your elbow a little, bend your shoulder a little, keep your elbow up. Don't get all deformed when you play the bass. Play it in a very natural position. And so I took that to heart very early. And I think I have to give that credit for never having any injuries, even though I've played about 3,000 or 4,000 gigs now. I don't have any issues with tendons or pain from playing the bass, because I think I did good technique all these years, thanks to Craig. So that's probably the most important thing to me about proper getting at least some instruction.
That's a good advice. I always suggest lessons, and I actually give one lesson this morning right before the slap stream. And I was talking about how lessons for me were always kind of like a shortcut, kind of like a 3 years of playing by yourself without lessons, with equal practice, and you get around a year with lessons. That's kind of like my thing. It's kind of, you're not
it
gonna get
is.
anywhere if you don't practice. But
No,
it's about like with practicing, lessons can save you lots of times.
it's important. Yeah, and you have to be humble enough to realize that there's people that are ahead of us, and in
Yeah,
my
you're
case,
learning. You're stealing someone's. I mean, learning someone's experience. So,
yeah,
which can,
and they're saving you. Often they're saving you making the mistakes they made.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And Craig used to tell me his teacher was a guy named Buell Neidlinger, who was a real famous, intense bass player. And I've heard stories from other people that Buell was incredibly intense. But Craig said he would go to Buell's house to practice and learn, and do his lesson. And Buell would leave him in the basement to practice things that he showed him. And if he couldn't hear it upstairs loud enough, he'd stomp on the floor right above him, They're like, play harder, and he was just like very strict.
Old school,
So,
huh?
old school, yeah. So Craig brought a little bit of that into my playing, and he was kind of strict. But looking back, that's what you need. You kind of need somebody to establish at least the right way to do things. And I think that's what worked for me. He was like, here's how you finger a bass. Here's a technique, and then use that and grow whatever direction you're going to go. And so that was a great platform that, even though I got really into playing all kinds of styles of bass and playing loud bass and, the stuff I did with Hank 3, but I still always fell back on the proper technique, and it allowed me to like probably play better. It got me in tune faster. Like the Simandl fingering is a great strategy. It's more than just, having to learn a damn fingering. It makes sense. Like I can ask a student when I occasionally give lessons, or I used to when I was in Nashville for a little bit, but I would say, play a chromatic scale up the G string, for instance. And I could tell right away if they had a strategy for doing that or if they didn't. They'd go like note, note, slide, slide, note, 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 slide, slide, or they would do something like, just use one finger the whole way. And when you learn the Simandl method, it goes 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. It has like, you have a shifting technique that puts your hand in the right spot, and so that your muscle memory can kick in and you can develop that. And then you don't have to think so hard about where the damn notes are on that big fretless fretboard. And that was really useful no matter what style of music you play, because you got to play with the notes in tune, I think. Otherwise, they're no good.
And it's I don't think it's just a Simandl method. I mean, any classical method.
Yeah, there's a few good methods.
Positions, yeah.
And I think there's more. There's better evolutions of that method now. That just happened to be the going one at the time that was good enough to like.
Oh, absolutely.
It got me a strategy. So from that, I was like, okay, this isn't so hard. It's like, it's a lot of notes and it's a lot of fingerboard if you're just trying to take it all in at once. But if you break it down to, a strategy, and that, wow, these notes all repeat as soon as you go one string over or two strings over. They repeat as soon as you go halfway up the string. You start breaking it down into manageable pieces of information so that you can relate to your bass neck without it, you can see it in your head. It's like when I hear a song, I can see where these notes are that I need to play. I don't have to be like, oh shit, there's a lot of fingerboard. Where am I going?
Oh,
it's
yeah, absolutely. Would you say that the playing piano helped you in any way?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I wish I'd gone further with it, but
like more like in a theory or like for actual playing bass?
In the theory, and like you pointed out earlier, rhythm too, because the piano is very like counterpuntal, and it's also you have to learn to separate your hands, in order to do that, which is really important, for any style of music. You can't. There's an interference, I think, between the sides of the body and the brain that has to be overcome to play practically any instrument, especially piano, because you're playing a bass line down here and you're playing a melody up here. But even with the bass, I'm playing stopping notes here, and I'm playing rhythm. Whoops. Sorry, everybody, I'm knocking this place apart. If you're playing rhythm with the right hand and you're doing a completely different thing with the left hand. So there was a friend of mine that went further with this idea. It's this incredible musician in Branson, Missouri named Kevin Moore, who plays with the Gaither vocal band now. And he's just like this child prodigy on violin. Again, another violinist influencing my world. And he was also a maniac. Kevin's like a wild man, loved to party. But I didn't know anybody better. He had such perfect pitch. We'd walk into 7-Eleven and the bell would ding and he'd be like, that's F. And he's absolutely right. He'd tell you it's a little flat even. He would be so right on. There was no question about it. But he played violin since he was 3. But he showed me the simple exercise, which is a drum exercise, which is like just a flam. And it's like a variation on that where you go like both right, both left, both right, both left. Like you do it in time with music. And then you can make a subdivision or a clave, so you're going flip, and at first I couldn't do it at all. I was like, wow, this is stupid hard, even though it looks easy, because it's interfering. Your mind is like, has to work separately to do that. And so I practice. He goes, just do that exercise always. Like if you're on a 2-hour drive, just do it to the music. Do it to every song that comes on. Do the flam exercise with it, do it fast, do it slow. Try to make it fit the groove. Groove with it. Don't just force it out. Make it swing, make it clave, make it do anything you need. And so I've been doing that for years. Man, what a difference. It's like probably the same benefits you'd get from playing piano or being a drummer. Drummers work on those rudiments constantly. And bass players should too, because rhythm, it should be so second nature that you don't think about it at all. So that way you can just integrate with the others on the stage and fit seamlessly with them. When you do that, people like it. It shows.
How do you apply that knowledge into bass playing?
When I don't know what, I think it started when I started playing air bass, because I realized when I wanted to play bass that I was playing air bass, and I'm like, you can afford every instrument at the air store. It's not like I want to play piano, but I can't afford one, so I'm going to get a guitar. It's like, no, I just wanted to play bass. It's just what I heard in the music. And then I realized it was the groove I was hearing. I was like, I loved the groove. And then I started listening to like funky, weird grooves like Ry Cooder, for an example, or John Hyatt stuff, or anything that had like a New Orleans feel. And I started realizing that really fat, deep grooves were where it was at musically. And that makes a lot of sense for bass playing. Like, I don't know if you need that. You do need that for guitar, but you take a lead guitar player and you hand him a bass, and he's not gonna necessarily dig into that groove aspect of it. Some do. Any great musician understands, I think, that the groove is something you have to worship. It really is it's the bedrock of all that's happening on that stage. Whether you're talking about great vocals or great harmonies or great lead guitar and piano, if it doesn't have that massive groove, then it's not anywhere near what it could be. So that's what got my ear, and I realized I had to practice things that made me better at grooving and better at just feeling it. Sometimes the groove is a lot less. It means eliminating things. Leave a lot of space. Leave dark spots. Leave some canvas showing. Don't just put paint everywhere. The groove should be its own little creature, that kind of makes sense, has its own personality. So I think that bass is all about that. That's what bass playing is. It's like it's the link between the melody and the drums. It's like got to groove. So anything you can do to make your groove better is important. Drum rudiments, for an example.
Absolutely. I would like to hear you play a little bit more. Do you have something for us?
I don't really know what I don't really have any complete. I could try a little bow with this thing.
I would like to keep, cool. Let's do a bow, and
Or
then next
let me.
time I'm going to ask you for more slapping, and I would like to explain a little bit of your uh, thumb approach.
Oh,
But
okay.
let's do some bows now.
Okay, hold on. Let me grab that and my rosin.
All right. I hope you all enjoyed the slap stream with Djordje featuring Jason Brown. If you have some questions, make sure to write them
Gotta put the
down in
rosin
the
on the
live
bow,
chat.
or
And
the bow
Jason
doesn't
is
do
back, it seems
anything.
like.
This is not a real great bow, but it's got one of my new kind of an innovation here. It's a bow grip that you can mold to your hand. The nylon string is really hard to bow. It's not the best. Very hard. Steel is so much better. But the bow's fun for a lot of reasons because it allows you to just have a steady, huge, long note. This isn't the bass I usually bow. I usually use this bass for rock and stuff, but I do keep the bow with it. I keep a bow with it because it's sometimes so much fun to pull out, and especially with an amp. And and something stuck in here. I can't put the bow in there. And it's really a massive sort of a cool thing to use like with in a rock song because you can play like kind of like a keyboard. You can make this big giant note that never ends. But for slapping and any kind of exercises, I like I made up some little exercises that you just go down the scale like around the circle of fifths. So you're going. So it never ends. And then you can switch up the rhythm, go. And then stuff like that's pretty useful. I find myself just playing like really abstract crap a lot just for exercises, to like keep you thinking ahead. And I don't have any like bass songs to play with because I'm such an accompanist, but like
What is that? Like, can
I
you,
picked
do
up
you
bits and
mind?
pieces of
Oh,
stuff
you
like
don't
Hank
hear me with the
Williams.
headphones.
I saw the Mikey play, like Junior Husky. Improvising a little bit, but he does something like that. I just like screwing around. Bob Marley bass lines. Oops. It's like, I think my playing is more of a stream of consciousness, including when I'm playing with other people. I just tune into what's going on and try to contribute something and support it, you know. And I almost don't remember anything. It just happens in the moment. You know? I've got a fast ear for music, and I can hear what people are doing, and then I just do my part, and it's really happens in the moment, kind of like cooking food, you know, and you eat it and then it's gone. So I'm working out some other little, you know, repertoires for bow that are more classical based, just because that's really good exercise to do. But I can't even play them on this bass right now because the G string is where most of it happens, and it's just so hard to play on that nylon string with the bow that it makes you feel like you can't play at all. That's the only problem with the nylon string. They don't grip like a gut does.
I know. I always play steel strings, so I don't have.
Forgot I didn't have these on. I hope that was coming through okay. I forgot I just set the headphones off to the side. Could you hear any of that?
Saying that, you know, I always play steel strings, so
yeah, I know you do. It's I went through a gut phase. Was that? Could you hear that okay? Because I had the phones off, and it was like I forgot that. I don't know how good this mic is on my Beats headphones. So
it's great.
But yeah, you're a tough player. You play the hell out of steel strings. That impresses me, and I like steel too. These are a mixed set. These are Tomastic, a medium, I think, on or a Vike on the E. It's for sure a Vike on the A. It's a solo Tomastic on the D, because I like it. It's getting lighter as I head towards that gut, or you know, and then the Weed Whacker G, which is like a gut. So I like that setup because I went through a long gut phase when I lived in Nashville, but they don't hold up that great in, you know, humidity, and summertime in the South is nothing but humidity. It's just brutal. It's just like, I mean, it's pure humidity in the guts. You know, you put a new set of gut strings on and they'd start unraveling in a week, you know, and blow out on my gig in Mississippi, you know, and it's like, so I started looking around, and besides that, I do like playing other styles of music. Besides, like, I like to incorporate slapping into everything, but I wouldn't call myself like a rockabilly slap player as much as I'm just a slap player that wants to find every possible weird place to put it, and in other styles. So to me, the steel strings give you a little more chance to have a better note. You know, it's more focused, it's more in tune. You can play, you can play a whole note if you want. You can just hold the note. You can use the bow if you want. And these Tomastic strings they're such high quality strings, it's ridiculous. You know, they're expensive, but I had on one bass, I had a set on there for probably going on 10 years, and I finally traded them out because I just got guilty feeling. I'm like, okay, that's just, I'm like a super cheapskate or something, but they were still working, so I didn't feel like I gotta hurry up. You know, they didn't break. But so you get your money's worth. If you take decent care of them, you get 2 or 3 years easily before they even start losing like that something. What kind of steel strings do you use?
Tomastics.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. They're really good.
They've been making a new prototype strings for me, and it's they're for people allergic to nickel.
The gold ones?
Allergic to nickel, but they gave me a set like to test out. Like,
are those the gold ones?
They were gold ones, yes.
Yeah. I just saw a set of those. Carlitos has a set. What do you think of them?
I love them. Yeah. They made me that. They gave me that like maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I don't know. And then I tested them out, and then they decided not to make them, you know, for public, but they've been sending me a few sets per year. So you know,
I just used a set of those on Carlitos Del Puerto's bass, and was amazed how neat they felt.
Yeah, it's cool. You know, I've been talking to them right before Corona. I went to Vienna to, you know, Tomastic headquarters. We had a meeting and we were talking about making them available, but you know, then Corona hit it, so I don't know what's going to happen.
I smell smoke.
Oh, okay. Do you want to fix that first?
Let me just look outside real quick. It's like I'm all of a sudden smelling like a strong whiff of smoke. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
All right. Please do. Hope everything is okay. All right. We want to make sure that everybody is safe around Jason, that all these bases are safe. We don't want any smoke, any fire. And we are approaching fire season and
All
crazy
good.
summers
My
here in California.
We're all good. My neighbor
Was it
has
a
a
barbecue?
smoker. Yeah, he has a smoker, and he just fired it up with the kindling. So I smelled wood burning, and
Ah,
in my line of work, the smell of wood burning needs an answer, or you got a problem.
oh yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
we're very afraid of fires. I've got
You
special smoke alarms.
you have also another or had another kind of career. You were doing some teching, and then I know that you went on tour with some interesting bands. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, in the '90s, when I lived up in Northern California, um, a really great guy moved in that was already good friends with a friend of mine, a gal. It was like he ended up marrying her, and it was El Jefe from NoFX. And he became a good friend and was, kind of bored and lonely up in Humboldt because there's not much to do up there. So he, we started jamming together, and he started joining me with a lot of my bands. When we'd have a gig, he'd sit in and stuff. So, and then he knew I worked on guitars because I worked at the local music store and I fixed like everything in Humboldt County that had a string on it, pretty much. And he was like, "Hey, do you want to go on tour with us and be our tech?" And I was like, "What do I got to do?" He's like, "Go on world tours and party and just like make sure the guitars and basses work." And I'm like, "Okay, that sounds doable." So that was back in the '90s. So started going on tour with NoFX, and it was great. Great bunch of guys, and still, and think they're great. And I learned a lot from them too, besides just having a great time, is that they were super organized. They look like a party from the outside, but they really had their shit together in a big way, um, as a band, and were really looked up to in the whole punk scene for those reasons. And they were just amazingly good at what they did. Like we would roll into town. There was five crew and 4 band members. There was 9 of us total that went. I was the instrument tech for guitars and basses. There was a drum tech. There was the front of house sound guy, Kent, that was also the road manager, and Limo that was like the stage manager, and then Jason that was the merch guy, and I'm trying to think. I think that's everybody. And it was just amazing. It was like an army. I'd roll into town, they get it done, like big time. Like they'd recruit a few people, a couple fans to help, grab those boxes, grab that stuff. Here's some shirts, and then just rock. They'd take the stage and own it, and like just blow the place out. So it was a lot of fun. It was a challenging gig because they were rough on stuff. I remember a couple gigs. We played a gig in Italy, and the crowd was spitting like just nonstop, like it was raining spit. And it was my first time experiencing a punk show in Italy. So they're like, "Don't worry, man, this means they like us." I was like, "Awesome." I'd hate to see what happened if they didn't. And there was always like crazy stuff flying on the stage, like watches, basically anything that came off of anybody in the crowd, like in the mosh pit, flew onto the stage. And there's lots of shoes, lots of watches, wallets, sometimes anything you could think of. If it fell off of a human, it flew through the air and hit the stage. And that always happened. But one time Melvin, the rhythm player, did a big jump because he likes to jump, and both strap locks just ripped out of his Les Paul, just like out. It hits the ground. He runs over to me, he goes, "Dude." So I was like, "Oh shit." So I got him his spare guitar, and I just like put the strap locks back in while the spit's flying. This was in Italy, and got him back in, got the guitar back together, and everything was all good. And then another time, I forgot where we played first, but it was some incredibly sweaty gig. It was like just raining. Like when we played indoor clubs, it'd be so packed and so high energy that it would just like raining sweat. You know, it's like 100% humidity in there. And so the next day after one of those gigs, we go to somewhere in Germany. We're playing some chateau that used to be Hitler's or something, and the gig was in the swimming pool. It's like this giant pool in the backyard, but it was empty, and they'd turned that into like part of the pit for the crowd, and then you could be in the pool or outside the pool. It's like an Olympic-sized pool, so it held a lot of people. And we go to get Melvin his Les Paul, and none of the knobs would turn. Like from the night before, with all the humidity, like they wouldn't turn at all. Like I remember taking the knobs off and trying to turn the pots with pliers, and they still wouldn't. It was like they were frozen, like they were welded. So that's the first time I'd seen anything like that. But we had some spares and stuff, so I had to take all the pots out of his Les Paul, which is a pretty busy wiring harness, if you know Les Pauls, and resolder the whole thing on the side of the swimming pool in Germany while this punk show was going on. They made it happen. You know, it was like, it's kind of like a fun job because you never knew what would happen, and you had to just make it work. And I ended up rewiring all the amps so that their effect sweeps were working right, and then things worked better. And then other bands would come over, you know, when we'd play festivals and be like, dude, can you fix our amps? You know, and it was fun. Got to meet a lot of people and be useful. And they're good dudes. We got in a lot of like little altercations and crazy fans and people that would attack out of the blue. You know, the kind of a hectic scene. One time someone threw a can, I think it was in the UK, and they threw a full beer at Fat Mike and it hit him square in the forehead and cut like a happy face into his head. It was flying. It really sucked. But he only stopped for a minute, you know, and I had to go get the paramedics, and they wrapped his head with this big bandage and taped it shut. And he cussed out the crowd for, you know, it's like, turn this guy in, you know. I was really pissed. But then the show went on. He didn't even storm off stage or anything. It was great. We kept playing. So, yeah, I like those
That
guys.
sounds like fun. So after that, have you moved to Nashville after that?
Yeah, it was right after that. I was still basically working for No Effects, and we were home from tour. And I got a call from a friend of mine, this guy named Jay-Z, John Zuliger, who's was a great guitar player that played for the Ragin' Cajun, not Sammy Kershaw, but Doug Kershaw, the fiddle player who was like a famous Cajun fiddler.
Yeah, I know it
and
is.
Jay-Z played with him for years, and Jay-Z was an old friend of mine from Humboldt who was instrumental in bringing us to Australia. So Jay-Z had already been good at dragging me around the world, and he goes, "Hey, can you come to Branson? We need a bass player, and you know, just we got a place for you to stay and play bass in our band, and it'll all be good." And then the season kind of ends in Branson. It's like a seasonal thing, you know. They have the show season, and then they have a winter festival, and then it's kind of dies off there after, you know, for the winter after it's Christmas. But I thought, what the hell? I've always wanted to see what Branson was about because it intrigued me because I played country music, and I knew that Branson was where lots of the famous country artists went. And instead of going on tour, they bought a big theater and they stayed in one spot and had the audience come to them. And it's kind of a sleepy, you know, it's pretty much geared for older audiences, I think. But so we had a house gig, and I said, yeah, let's do it. So I moved to Branson, and almost instantly I met Hank 3 because he is just beginning his gig and like being Hank 3. He was like barely 22 years old, and Willie Nelson had a theater in Branson that he wasn't using, and he let Hank 3 have it, like to do a show. And he's like, so we were set up in this, you know, this cool theater that was off the beaten path in on the main drag, but down this hill where it was cool because we could like, Branson's very conservative, like, you know, don't party too much and don't make a ruckus kind of a thing. And, you know, and here you got Hank 3, who's a total punk rocker, and I just came off the road with No Effects, so it was good we were off the beaten path of hair. But so he asked me to join his band. Like I met him, and he was like we were the only two guys in town that could even relate to each other. And he saw my like no effect shirts, because all I had for clothing practically was no effect swag at the time. And we got to be friends, and he's like, "We want to join my band?" And he was just starting, and he had a real traditional country band with fiddle and steel, and everybody wore suits and dressed nice, and Hank wore an old nudie suit that was his dad's, and he was just skinny as a pencil. And so I joined up with him, and started doing that in Branson, and that was a trip. And that was like major life shift that I didn't really see coming, but I ended up moving from Branson to Nashville after that, and just kept, things just kept happening, and I never came back to California for 20 years.
That's amazing. And you have a question from Cloudberry. He's asking you, during which years did you help NoFX?
It was in the mid 90s. It's like 95, 94, 95 area. And then I moved to Branson, I think in the end of or just after summer in 95. So it was just like
and you also have a message from Jonathan Donchad. It says, "You, Jason, have always made things happen."
All right. Tell him thanks.
All right.
I like it. I don't know. I'm very lucky that I feel like that the community of bass has always wanted me to make things happen or been there for me. So I just did. And I didn't really mean for it to happen, but I'm grateful it did.
And just so you know, Jonathan is Spanky.
Oh, Spanky. I know Spanky. He's great. He's a bass player too. He's actually from Humboldt County, from way back.
I'm like very well familiar with Humboldt County. I used to live in San Francisco for 7 years.
Yeah.
And I was playing in Humboldt County all the time. So I'm familiar with all the places that you mentioned.
It's a beautiful place.
Eureka, all of those.
And then Garberville down in the South County.
I played Garberville so many times.
Yeah, there was a great venue there, big old wooden venue that had all
Octagon?
What was it?
Octagon?
I think so. And I think it had another name before that. I can't remember. Humboldt County doesn't lend itself to good memory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there's just too much pot there. But it had such an amazing music scene, and it kind of disappointing now, because I went up there a few years ago and there was just nothing going on. There was a couple of DJs in a club, and they were trying to charge a cover just to listen to some what I thought was terrible music. And
one thing that lots of our listeners are interested to hear are, how did you and when did you start DEUCE Bridges?
Oh, DEUCE Bridge, yeah. That's been an interesting thing. I got one right here. Besides the one that's on my bass, the one on this bass is the last one I made in Wisconsin. But there's a DEUCE Bridge right there. This one's going on a guy named Kurt's bass from San Diego, as soon as you can make it up here. I was living in Wisconsin, and it turns out that this friend of mine, Jason Miner, he just came over to my house one day, and he introduced himself, and he goes, "Yeah, I knew you were in town, but I didn't want to bug you. I don't know what that's about." But he said, but some friends of mine are like, "Yeah, he's friendly. Go see him." So he showed up, and he had this really trippy aluminum bridge that he had welded, because he's a welder and stuff. And it wasn't anything like a traditional bridge. It was just a real different design. It had like 3 or 4 legs, and it's basically bulletproof bridge that wouldn't tip over no matter what you did. I mean, literally. So I thought that's kind of interesting. But being a traditionalist, because I believe in the 300 years of wisdom that's come from the world, the violin family and the lutherie that's stemmed from it. There's a lot of reasons that it's like it is, because the stuff works. So I said to him at the time, I go, "This is interesting, but what if we build," because I'm a fabricator and welder too. So I said, "What if we built something and we incorporated what is important and true about of traditional bridge, but then try to tackle the issues of like bridges falling over and traditional bridges being difficult to work with, because if you screw it up, you basically have to throw it out and start over. You make it too low, you only have so much wood to work with on a traditional bridge, so it's kind of a lot of pressure. And even as a really experienced luthier now, they're still tricky to install. Most shops charge a lot for good reason, because to really do a nice job on a bridge is time consuming and takes a lot of focus, and you got to get it right. If it's off by enough, the bass doesn't play worth a damn, and the bridge doesn't hold up either. So that was where the first DEUCE started, was that it was I came up with a couple weird
Did we just lose Jason? Jason, can you hear me? Are you there? He doesn't seem there. I will try to call him on the phone and see what's going on. In the meantime, make sure to slap that subscribe button and hit the and like button as well. Hey, Jason, I just lost you. Okay. Are you? I don't see you here. So, okay. Okay, I see you. All right. It seems to be back. All right.
Well, I'm glad I'm back. Can you hear me?
All right. I'm glad you're back too. And you have a question actually about DEUCE Bridge from Keith Rawlings. Is it compatible with all bridge wing pickups?
Hold on. But for some, you're not through my headphones anymore. Say something again.
You have a question about DEUCE Bridge. Is it compatible with all bridge wing pickups?
It's compatible with any kind of pickup that can be clamped in. There's a screw that goes here, and it basically clamps like a wing pickup. And I'm going to make a future model that's going to have a thin line style, like a guitar, like an acoustic guitar pickup that goes in this channel. But I haven't made that yet. Let me try to plug my headphones back in. It was going so well, and then hear me.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, now you're there. Awesome.
All right.
What happened? I'd like to be able to hear.
All because of that neighbor barbecue smoke.
Yeah, he's burning down the network. Well, I hope we didn't lose anybody. But the DEUCE Bridge works well with most pickups, and you can use a lifeline style with it and put it between the foot, and you can also use of course, the David Gage realist that goes under the bridge foot, and you can use that with anything. But
cool! So you can use pretty much any pickup. So
pretty
Keith,
much,
that's the answer. Keith is using Vic's Model C single wing bridge pickup.
And a DEUCE?
No, he's asking you if it's compatible with that pickup.
Oh yeah, it'll use the Vic Victor pickup.
Yep.
Yeah, it should work. Like, let me show you if I can move my camera carefully. I'll show you the pickup on my bass here. Is right here. Can you see that?
Yep.
So that's a Underwood, and then you have this tightener, and this is just a spacer. It's a small piece of the same plywood that the saddle's made of to soften the and spread the force of the screw, and it warms up the sound. So basically, anything that fits in this slot can be used as a pickup, including two Underwoods. And instead of using one on each side, you can take the Underwood and you can put both stacked together in the one slot, which is kind of interesting. You get like a lot more power out of it even when you do that.
Kind of the same sound, just louder?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And So you can put anything in there that fits, and basically almost anything fits because it's a really wide slot. It's designed to accommodate, you know, lots of unknowns. But so the other thing, oh, I'm sorry.
So you have one more question about DEUCE. So are the new DEUCEs available yet?
Yes, I'm making them. The newest ones aren't. I'm making a composite material DEUCE that I'm still designing, and I've been saying this for a few years, but actually I'm really in the design phase now. And I found the material, but I'm also making lots of the aluminum welded ones, and I'm anodizing them again. You can get them in a bunch of different colors, and these are the original, and they're really lightweight. They're actually lighter than a wooden bridge or equal to. They're right in the ballpark, if not lighter.
Do you have any idea how many of those bridges you sold so far?
I think probably about 500 or 600. There's a lot out there. Yeah, and there's been a few phases. My buddy Jason Miner was making them when I first moved back out to the West Coast. I was working at Lemur Music full time, and I stopped making the DEUCEs. And Jason took over and was making a machine version and doing some other versions. But he got sick of it, and basically, you know, it's a lot of work. They're tedious to make and stuff. So he's like, "Hey, I'm sick of these things." So I just took them back over. A lot of people were asking about them, and so I've been making them ever since. And I just bought, like, I have a lot of parts laser cut, like, you know, for this. So I just got enough parts for about 70 bridges. So
nice. So when people want to order them, what is the best way to order it?
The best way is just to send us an email at DEUCE Bridge, which is DEUCE, because people sometimes spell DEUCE weird, but like the playing card, DEUCEBRIDGE at Gmail. And you just send an email and go, "I want a DEUCE Bridge," and my wife will get right back on you, and we'll get you a DEUCE Bridge. And I'm making them faster than ever right now. Usually it's about a 2-week lead time. In the past, it's been, the last batch took almost 6 months because I ran out of parts, and then COVID had run my old supplier out, and so I had to find new people, and you know how that is. Everything changed all of a sudden. So, but we got it all back together. It ended up working out better. I found a really great supplier that had a higher minimum. They're like, you have to spend $500 minimum. So I ended up buying a lot more parts than I needed, which means I'm set for a long time now. So that's good. So I'll take them. If anybody wants to make orders, send it on.
All right. Now's the time.
But the other thing about them that led to the development to make them friendly for people was like, this is a channel here. Let me go back to this one here with the camera. A little show and tell. This is on my rock bass. It's like the pickup or the saddle here. Afraid the phone's gonna fall, but the saddle fits into this channel. So this part is replaceable. So you don't have to, if something goes wrong with that saddle, you don't have to throw away the bridge. You just fix the saddle. Then the other thing, replace the saddle. The other thing is it has this vertical foot on this side, and the foot on the G side is traditional. It goes the normal direction. The reason this one goes vertical is, first of all, because it keeps the bridge from tipping over. But second of all, it follows the bass bar instead of spanning it. And it turns out that made it sound a little better. It just seemed like there was something about the tone that was more focused because it was right over the bar, and it was spreading it over the bar a little bit instead of all being focused on a narrow spot. So it ended up having two advantages. And the feet are made of spruce, so they're really easy to stand, and they couple and shape to the top really nicely. And they actually work great on really old basses with delicate old tops because the spruce feet are softer than maple. And I wound up putting one of these on an 1850 beautiful Austrian, expensive old bass at the request of the owner because he liked the way they sound so much, even though I'm even hesitant to put them on traditional old basses just because they look, you know, kind of incongruous. You know, they fit more of a rock and roll theme, but but they definitely work. So that's my goal, is to make the new bridge have the architecture that appeals to the classical and jazz players, and see if we can conquer that market, would be great, because they definitely work on a performance end. I've had a number of luthiers around the country contacted me and been like, wow, I just installed one of your bridges on this guy's bass, and he goes, I was expecting it to suck. He goes, but it sounds better than it ever did. So had a couple guys that are luthiers that ended up buying a couple bridges off of me for that reason. And so there's definitely something to it. You know, it has a narrow center point. It has a lot of the features that a real bridge has that are enhanced. You know, it probably has more resonant movement, because a bridge really moves as you're playing bass or cello. It kind of dances, you know, and when it's made right, it moves with the strings, and it kind of encourages that energy. So I made sure that these would do that, and then some. And I think because it's thin aluminum and you can control the width of the waist, that you can emphasize those types of features. So they feel more lively even than a wood bridge. And so I'm excited to see if we can go a new direction with the classical and jazz world, because it's really the final frontier for those things, I think, if I can get there.
That sounds like an accomplishment, and you have it planned out. So hope you're gonna
We'll
be
see.
able to achieve
We'll see if it works.
new audience. Yes, new customers.
Yeah.
And you're back to Lemur, right? If I understand correctly.
Yeah. A neat thing happened when I was living in Wisconsin. I was like a real good friends with Dave Rowe, the Johnny Cash bass player. And
Oh,
Dave
he texted me yesterday.
Huh?
He texted me yesterday that to tell me that he played on last Brian Setzer record.
Right. Yeah. I knew about that. We just talked a few weeks ago, and I heard about that. But Dave's been an instrumental and helpful guy throughout my career. And from the moment I got to Nashville, he was supportive of me, and really like helped me out, gave me a really cool electric bass. And then he would give me his gigs in town when he was on the road with Cash, and I would, sub on his gigs and do some sessions and whatever he needed, which was awesome because I was a pretty new guy, but it was a nice way to start out in Nashville, playing with Hank 3 and doing sub work for Dave Rowe. So I got my foot in a lot of doors right away, thanks to that. And
Nice.
Dave was always there in one way or another, being really helpful for me. And so when I lived in Wisconsin, I called him one day and I was like, Dave, I can't take this cold weather anymore. I'm just thinking about moving back to Nashville. And he goes, man, I don't think you're going to like it. He goes, this town's really changed. And, he was right. It had really, when I moved out of there, I was right at the tail end of the old Nashville. And it became the new Nashville over the period of time I was in Wisconsin, and just exploded in growth into the Nash Vegas thing and a bunch of really chintzy clubs. And he goes, well, you might not like it here, but you still work on basses, right? And I was like, yeah. He goes, well, Lemur Music. He goes, I was just talking to the owner and they need you. I said, really? Like, I'd be back in Southern California where I'm from. So he goes, I'll call her right now. So he did. And he put it together for me and they flew me out. And this was back in like early 2014. And they flew me out and I got there and it was super intense. Like Lemur was in a rough shape. It's owned by two people, a husband and wife, and the husband was passing away from cancer at that time. And the shop was really in a bad state. And at one point they had been one of the biggest bass shops and still were in a lot of ways, but had hit a real rough patch. So I went out there and it was like, wow, the husband, Jerry, passed away while I was there. Like I go out there the week to try the gig. One of the owners dies, so I'm like, oh boy. And there was like a backlog on repairs that was a year long. And there was a lot of tension and everybody looked really stressed and worried. So I said, I'll take it. Let's do it. You know, they asked me if I wanted the job, and I said yes. It can only get better. And so I took it, and I ended up working for years there, for 4 or 5 years as the head luthier, and it was really good. But there was, you know, moments when it was a little hard for me to get along with the old owner, the other one, and so I ended up going solo, and parted ways with them a few years ago, like 2018 or something like that. And I ended up at the guitar shop in Laguna Beach because they were like, "Hey, come on over here," because I do all kinds of lutherie. So I landed there, and as luck would have it, all my bass clients were just like, "Hey, I need you to work on my bass." I'm like, "Well, I'm not at Weimer anymore," and they just said, "Well, where are you?" And they'd make an appointment, and everybody kept coming to me. So I just figured I gotta keep doing this, and I quickly overran the guitar shop in Laguna with basses and everything. So I started my own shop at my house, and that's what that was a really good thing. I ended up having a lot of clients and customers in the guitar shop. I got to give them credit for really rescuing me at a point when I would have hit the ground head first if they hadn't been there. Instead, I hit the ground running. I went immediately into tons of work, and everything was looking good. So then I went solo with the bass work, and then 2020 rolled around and COVID hit, and everything was going great, and then it just all ground to an instant stop. And even though I still had a lot of clients bring in basses to get work because they figured, well, I'm not working, so it was kind of nice. The basses I did have to work on, there wasn't like the usual deadlines, like I got to go on tour in 2 weeks or so. But then, so back to Lemmer, the old owner decided to retire at the end of last year, and one of the great people there named Tammy, or T, decided to take it over. And she bought the business and took it over in January and found this incredibly cool spot in San Clemente that's about 800 feet from the beach, literally. It's like we got an ocean view, and it's a really hip part of town. It's like there's surf shops and skate shops, and people riding cool bikes and motorcycles everywhere, and it's just really a neat vibe. And so that's where it is now. And Tammy asked me if I'd wanted to get involved again, and I said, yeah, because she's super cool. And there's really, Lemmer's a neat concept of the bass. They've been at it a long time and have a number of really cool products and interventions that the old owner that passed away had come up with. So it was, a great opportunity. I thought for sure I want to be part of that again, and we'll build it into hopefully everything it was and more. Better vibe, new direction, and also Lemmer's going to be a resource for blast call basses and accessories and repairs. Now that they're in the UK, totally. So we have a little blast call display, and we're going to be expanding that and getting more of their products in over time, and also able to repair and fix blast calls in the United States that are here for people. So put that on your notes, because that's an important thing. And I just did one yesterday, in fact, had a blast call.
Oh, the blast calls?
Yeah.
All right.
So we're going to take care of them and emphasize being like a way to reach blast call from the United States still.
Nice, because the blast cult, I don't know if people are aware, moved to London, but they can still have their bases here.
Yeah, well, check him out too. Everybody should look at Instagram and on the Blast Cult website. He's doing a bunch of really cool stuff. Jason Burns always has a bunch of great ideas. He's very innovative, and he's building some really bitchin' electric guitars and electric basses, and also the regular Blast Cult basses he always built. Doing it all right in London, and looking better than ever, really. So it's just sad to see it go. I helped them close down their shop here, it's sad to see the end of an era, but in so many ways, he's like probably even better off there because it's like a happening scene, and he knows what to do. And I think he's already killing it. So everyone should go there and take a look because he's building cool
I
stuff.
made sure on my last tour in Europe, like to stop by the shop, and it was really cool. And you have a message from our mutual friend Miguel. He said that we
Miguel,
salute you, Jason.
what did he say?
He said we salute you, Jason.
Oh, nosotros. I salute him back. Miguel's awesome. He used to work at Lemur years ago.
Yeah, I know.
And he's a hell of a good dude, and been another guy that I was super happy to meet. Finally, heard about him for years, talked to him on the phone and stuff, you know, and finally got to meet him and work with him. He was great.
He's great. I would like to hear a little bit more about your basses that you own and glimpse of your gear. You know, favorite amp. We heard about the strings. So favorite amp, favorite pickup, that type of thing.
Okay. Favorite amp, I would have to say, is the amp that's lasted the longest. I've got it sitting over here. The little good old Walter Woods. I don't know if you can see that. It's sitting there. That red amp right there. That's a Walter Woods from the 90s. And that amp has outlived every other amp I've ever had, pretty much. I mean, I've burned through a number of amps over the years where they, you know, started out new, got used up basically, and had a problem, and I took the Walter Woods back out. And every time I did, I was like, oh man, this amp sounds so good. Just amazing. I bought it in the early 90s from Walter Woods, and it was one of the best things I ever did for the bass because it weighs like 8 pounds, has an incredibly nice sound, and runs on 2 voltages, so you can put it in your bag and use it in Europe or anywhere you've got 240 or 220. You just need an adapter. You don't have to do anything else, so you can carry your sound with you. And I did. I've taken that amp all over the world, and it made life a lot easier because it's easy to carry. I still had my sound, and so over the years, though, I had an SVT, which I still have, like an old Magnavox SVT, because every bass player should have an SVT. But when I had roadies, I used to use that amp. Once I didn't have roadies anymore, the amp suddenly just seemed heavier than it ever seemed. And it was heavy. One of those things in a flight case, which you pretty much need to put them in or else they get ruined, is over 100 pounds just for the head. So, but I love it. It's a fantastic sound, and you can't hardly explain what a nice juicy sound it is to have a good working SVT for upright bass. Just the high end and the depth of the tone is so great. But over the years for speakers, I got these things here. If we can point the thing back this way, the bass is in the way. Under that Walter Woods, basically they're Acme cabinets, Acme 210 and 410. And I was one of the first guys to start using them. He was a guy that made them in Colorado, a guy named Andy. Real great, smart dude, physicist. And he invented the Acme cabinet, which is a 3-way cabinet. And it's flat, like really flat. Like it doesn't have any resonant peaks acoustically or electrically. And they have a mid-range speaker and then a high-end tweeter. And they just sound beautiful. It's like the first time I played like some good TV shows, and I used Claire Brothers monitors, which a lot of people don't know what those are, but it's basically a very top-end sound system that you'll find in TV studios all over the place. And it just strikes you immediately that, wow, that sound just sounds torquey, and it is flat. There's no like about to feedback. There's no mid-range resonance. It's just this beautiful, dense, torquey sound. I don't know if torquey is a good word for sound, but it's like you can just feel the horsepower in it, but it didn't feel like it was loud. They're about to explode. And these cabinets are the same way. That they just made it so you could turn your upright bass up. And having a flat cabinet is really important because you have, say, a peaky mid-range that's built into the cabinet. and, you know, and you're not loud enough, so you turn everything up. That mid-range now is probably above the threshold of where you're going to have problems with that frequency that's going to feed back and be a drag. So if you start out flat, it allows you to bring the whole thing up quite loud before you get any particular frequency above that threshold that's going to cause feedback and troubles. So I've been into that guy's cabinet for years, and he sends you new speakers when you need them. I've worn out probably about 20 speakers over the years because I've been using them since the 90s. And I'm down to just a single 410 and a single 210. I use the 210 for almost everything because it just sounds great. But and it's like my jazz gig rig because it's light and it sounds crystal clear. And it works great for anything unless you're just like stupid loud. Then for stupid loud, I've got a Crown power amp over here in this other rack case and a 410 Acme. And it's usually loud enough for everything that I need. It's got like a tube preamp in it and a little compressor and a 31 band graphic and a charger for my phone. And it's like basically a self-contained, take the lid off, plug it in, and you've got a nice loud rock rig that can handle, you know, big stages and whatever you need. But I rarely use it because I've, you know, just playing clubs and things around here. And I don't want to carry heavy stuff if I don't have to. But really, that's what's carried me through over the years. And at some point, we had like Ampeg. Ampeg wanted to come in and endorse us, but I was already using the SVP, and I just didn't even want to use the new stuff. And I'm pretty much not a gear junkie. I settle in on what works, and then I stick with it. I don't want a bunch of new stuff, and I don't want to have to learn new equipment. I just want a really good, solid sound. And once I got that, I left it alone. Pretty much, I use the JDI DI because first time I used one of those, same as using the cabinet. It was just flat. It sounded great. The low end was there suddenly, and everything was there. So my signal, basically, that I send to the front of house is the same one that comes out of the full range cabinets. And they're these cabinets are sort of like Mark, you know, like those I forgot what they're called. You know, the Mark Robertson and those really cool flat cabinets. Similar concept.
Green audio.
Yeah. Yeah, same idea.
Talked about Mark about it during his Slapstream.
Yeah, he's on the right track with those. It's like that really helps make bass playing easier. So I've been really stoked with just keeping it simple and not jumping around with too much gear. But I also always use Gallion Kruger heads. Thought they sounded really good as a backup and a spare that you didn't have to worry about too much in a pinch. You know, we all get stuck using stuff when you travel overseas, and you have to use a lot of different stuff and find out real fast what's going to be cool for the gig. And every now and then you get like an antique Trace Elliott with 8 10s that are mostly blown, and you realize it's not going to be the best gig.
Oh yeah, that happens to all of us. I kind of stuck, like I have a habit like to stuck with the same kind of gear that I've been using for years, and I've been happy so far, not too much trouble. We are approaching 2 hours now. We've been talking for 2 hours, which is, you know, that always surprised me every Saturday. You know, I can talk about bass for all this time. I pretty much asked you all the questions that I had that I wanted to ask you. Is there anything that you would like to mention before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd like to mention that since I've been on the West Coast, I've been really fortunate to have become friends and gained clients who are among many of the best bass players in the business. And one of them is Carlitos de Puerto, the Cuban guy, who plays with like Chick Corea and Barbara Streisand and stuff like that. He's like an A-team LA guy, but he's become a really good friend, and he's been very supportive. And I just wanted to give him a shout out, and also that he's kind of pushed me into this idea where we need to build our own Cuban bass. which is basically like the Ampeg baby bass,
Yeah.
small body, travelable, but one that incorporates a really great setup. So it's actually works right out of the box, because I ended up discovering that most of them don't, and I've become like the Cuban style bass fix-it guy now too, because Carlitos has so many friends from that genre that they all come to me and get the basses fixed now. So the wheels are turning, and this year we're working on the designs of that with the goal that next year we're going to try to launch something that he's going to start playing, and basically he'll be the face of the endorsement side of the business, and it's I'm real excited about that, because it's he's like very motivating. I'd be like, I don't know, man. He's like, just do it, bro. What are you waiting for? And he's like, I don't know anybody that gives a better pep talk, but just being out here in Southern California again is great, and I get I've become close with a lot of incredibly good bassists that have influenced me and made me a better player and made me feel really integrated into the scene. I do stuff for like Ron Carter now, and Stanley Clark. I'm supposed to work on his bass soon. We've done stuff for Christian McBride. Done stuff for bass player from New York Phil and San Francisco Symphony, San Diego Symphony. And one of my main things that I do, if anybody's a classical player out there, is you see extensions. See that? This thing right here is the classical device that allows you to tune down to a low C by just opening these capos. And I make those myself from scratch right here. And I'm going to put one on my rock bass someday, just a simpler version, because then you can go down to a big open C. And it's a huge note because you don't tune down to it. You actually add like almost a foot of scale length. So the note's really big and massive. But those are really a classical only thing, but there's no reason we couldn't put them on someone's bass that wanted to rock. So I challenge anyone to try it. I might be the first. I don't know. I don't even have one on my own bass yet. They're neat. They're fun.
I'll try.
Yeah, okay. I'll make you one. And you can do cool stuff. You could have like quickly have an open D, two Ds. You can drop it down to a C, or you could have like an E flat or a D flat and have that to incorporate into a piece, which is really, it's interesting. It does open your palette up, and they're very lightweight. They're all the parts I make myself. The metal's all aluminum. I anodize them. This guy wanted colors. He's the first one that has like a blue and green capos on it, but usually they're black, formal.
That's cool, and it's interesting to mention. Last night I had actually a recording session, and it required that I tune down my E to D, and I always kind of like the challenge that I have to transpose.
That would have solved it on the spot, and then you could shut the capo and be right back in E, just like that.
Yeah. So that's the easy way. I like to challenge myself. I like transposing,
I do. Actually, in Hank 3, I started tuning my E string down to D almost all the time, just because it was more massive. And once you remember it, it's pretty easy. It's just a period of time where you keep reverting back to the, thinking it's an E, that you make mistakes. Once you get past that, it's rad.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like huge.
A few years ago, I worked on a little piece with Marco Beltrami, a movie composer, and it was written that it goes down, and I forgot like D or like D flat or something. And then I was like, oh, I don't have the extension. He's like, but you can tune down, you can transpose, right? It was expected of me like to side read on the spot. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I can do it. So
that's really that's cool. Well, I'm sure you pulled it off great.
Oh yeah, it was fine, but most of the people that I play with are not thinking that way, and and then I was like, yeah, I can do this. So it was interesting.
That's the fact about it, is that it really is a classical music thing, but in classical music you run into it instantly. They'll be like,
absolutely, yeah, and it's great.
And you can't, you can look at a person's face, and if they don't have one of those, they're not that serious about classical music yet, because it's just, you can't even exist in a major symphony without being able to play those slow parts. It's expected. So I just made one for a guy named David Grossman, who's from the New York Phil, and he plays with LA Chamber Orchestra. And like 2 days after he got it, he put out this super cool LA Chamber video that is on YouTube, and it's Rossini's sonatas. And I highly recommend anybody that's interested in classical music check this out, because it's a tour de force, and you can hear the bass I just did and the C extension in action. But also, it's a beautiful recording, just so high quality.
You have one more. You have one more question, before we wrap it up. But I think that you answered it. You said that you use Underwood pickup, right?
Well, on this bass, there's an Underwood. On my jazz bass, my other bass that I play for lots of gigs is like a 18-something old German bass that's odd. I don't know what its history is, but I restored it, and it was a really neat bass, and it has Ron Carter's old neck on it, and I turned it into one of the Weimer-style traveled flyaway basses, and it has a David Gage Lifeline pickup on it. And we ended up using that because I was working on Ron Carter's setup, and he was using a full circle, and it started going out, and he got nervous about it, so he put a Lifeline on it too, and I left them both on. And I was able to just sort of A/B it while he was playing, so I'd hear Ron Carter with each pickup, and I was like, wow, they sound really similar. And he liked that he had a backup. So I ended up with that Lifeline that was on there and loved it. It's just a great all-around simple pickup. And they're durable. I haven't seen one go bad. They fit right under the bridge adjuster. Like you just lift the bridge a little and slip it in, and then the force squeezes it in there. And they're pretty foolproof. I got to say, they're excellent pickup, and you can take it off the bass and throw it in your suitcase and travel with it and put it on a borrowed bass really easily. And cool. It's definitely good to have. A nice all-around tone.
Awesome.
So that's my other one. And again, I'm just not a gear junkie, Yeah, this bass has a homemade clicky on it that I made from an old Fishman. From way back, the little round paddle kind, the BP 100 they called them, which actually sucked as a pickup, if you put them on like you're supposed to. But well, it works great as a clicky. So I took one of those and cut it in half, and then I've got a LR Bags preamp on this bass that has a stereo input, so I can balance the clicky and the main sound, and I can control the phase and EQ it a little, and it's a great little device, and it's practically invisible. So that's about it. It all works. I've been using this sort of setup on both basses for years just because it's worked great, and there's no reason to change.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for being a part of the Slapstream, for the all this Slapsville universe.
It was my honor and pleasure, Djordje. It's awesome, and I hope you come by the new Weimer sometime when you're in town. Where are you right now?
I'm all over the place, but always in LA. I go off into Europe and everybody.
Right.
I'm not moving.
Well, don't be a stranger and swing by the new shop, and anytime you need anything too.
Awesome.
Absolutely got your back.
Thanks so much. And all right, one more comment. So good to see you, Jason, on here. You always have been an inspirational dude. Glad to get turned on to this channel. Djordje Slapstream is awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Spanky, I believe. And then if you haven't seen the past episodes, make sure to slap that subscribe button and check them out. There's 52 more episodes.
Yeah.
All right. And Cloudberry Road, have a nice rest of the weekend.
Back at you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason, and hope to see you. I'm sure our paths will going to cross again soon. And
I think so.
We're going to talk more bass.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Talk to you soon, Djordje. Have a good one.
You too. All right. That was, I believe, 53rd episode of the Slapstream. Time flies by. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you want me to continue doing these. And then if you do, please check out the Patreon. The link is in the description of this video. I've been more active on it. So if you have any ideas what you would like to see on my Patreon, you can write them down under this video. Also, if you'd like me to feature somebody in the future, right under this video, I check out those comments all the time. So I'm not going to miss it. Thank you, Carolyn. Yes, please continue. I'll do my best to continue. And thank you all. Thanks for everything. And don't forget, never fret, slide it in smooth, and keep it in the groove. I'll see you next Saturday.